For a narcissistic parent, a child is not a small human being who needs love, protection, and care. For them, a child is a project, a mirror, a trophy, a tool. Sometimes, sadly, the child turns into a container for shame, a place where all the inner toxicity gets dumped. If this sounds harsh, ask yourself honestly, why does a narcissistic parent celebrate only those achievements of the child that they can take credit for? Why does almost every success of the child become the parent's personal victory? I taught them that. Those are my genes. I shaped this result. Why is the father warm, caring, and kind only when the child does exactly what he wants at that moment? And why does he suddenly become cold, distant, angry, even aggressive, as soon as the child shows their own opinion or dares to say no? To understand why narcissistic parents can't truly love their children, we first need to understand what real parental love is. Real love, whether it's between a parent and a child or between partners, starts with the ability to truly see another person. To see, not idealize or fantasize, not impose your own expectations on them, but recognize a real human being in front of you, with real feelings, fears, desires, and limitations. Real love contains something very important, a sense that you are enough simply because you exist. I care about you, not because you perform, achieve, or please me, but because you are you. This is where empathy lives. The ability to feel what another person is going through, to step into their shoes, to understand their pain. A narcissistic parent is not capable of this. They don't see the child as a separate person. The child is perceived as an extension of themselves, as a kind of robot built to satisfy the narcissist's own needs. That is why their love is always conditional. The inner message sounds like, I love you when you are successful, when you make me look good, when you achieve what I couldn't, when you confirm my greatness. The child turns into a walking proof of the parent's value. And the moment the child dares to disagree, assert themselves, or choose a path that doesn't fit the parent's script, everything changes. The parent flips, and the child suddenly becomes a traitor. Empathy disappears. The narcissistic parent doesn't feel the child's pain and doesn't care about their inner world because all of their attention is always on one person: themselves. From this inability to empathize grow those harsh behavioral patterns we often see in such families. When a narcissistic parent looks at their child, they don't see an individual with their own needs and feelings. They see a reflection. If the child is talented, attractive, successful, the narcissist basks in the glow of that success. Look at my child, look how amazing they are. That's my blood, my upbringing, my work. The child becomes a status symbol, a trophy, something the parent can show off, just like they might show off an attractive spouse or expensive possessions. But what happens when the child does not match the parent's expectations? Maybe they are not as successful, maybe they choose a different path, or maybe they have health issues or developmental differences. In that case, the same child can suddenly become a source of shame. The narcissistic parent may perceive this as a personal insult. They may deny the child's real problems, refuse treatment, ignore diagnoses. They will hold on to the illusion of perfection to the very last moment, even when the child's well-being is at stake, because admitting the child's imperfection would mean confronting their own. Then the child is pushed into the role of a scapegoat. The parent dumps on them all the suppressed emotions they cannot handle inside themselves: anger, shame, frustration. The child becomes the safest target, the one who cannot hit back. Out of this grows the system of conditional love that many children of narcissistic parents know too well. You receive warmth, affection, care, attention only if you behave in a way that fits your parents' script. Only if you are convenient. Love turns into something that can be turned on and off like a switch. You have to earn it. You never get it simply because you are inherently worthy. And you have to keep earning it constantly from a very young age. Then that child grows up and tries to earn love in exactly the same way. By becoming the good friend, the perfect partner, the ideal colleague. In reality, this often means convenient for others. They ignore their own needs and desires for the sake of another person's comfort, especially in romantic or close relationships. In any interaction where one person dominates like a locomotive and the other takes the dependent role, this old script starts to play out. If I behave correctly, maybe I'll finally be loved. This system becomes especially brutal in families with several children. Very often, love is distributed unfairly. One child becomes the so-called golden child. They reflect the narcissist's ideal image. They are praised for their looks, achievements, compliance. They are seen as the pride of the family. The other child is assigned the role of the scapegoat. They are blamed for everything, criticized, shamed, and loaded with the family's unprocessed negativity. The important point is that these roles don't necessarily depend on the children's real behavior. The golden child may be selfish or cruel, but they still receive praise and protection. The scapegoat may be kind, sensitive, and trying their best, but they will still be seen as not good enough and constantly at fault. These roles serve the parent's need for control. One child upholds the ideal image, the other absorbs the blame and pain. If the relationship between the parents collapses, for example after a divorce, the children often turn into weapons. The narcissistic parent starts using the child to control, punish, or spy on the ex-partner. What did your mom say about me? Who is she seeing now? What's going on with her money? And it doesn't matter that before this, the parent may have shown little genuine interest in the child's life, while the other parent did all the real parenting work. As soon as the child turns into a convenient tool, the narcissistic parent suddenly becomes hyperactive. Gifts, attention, loud declarations of love. But the goal here is not emotional connection. The goal is to pull the child into the conflict and use them as leverage. In this process, the child's feelings are again invisible. They become a function, a pawn in someone else's game. And even the favored child is not safe from yet another manipulative pattern, the emotional roller coaster of idealization and devaluation. One day the parent is in a good mood, full of energy, affectionate and playful. The next day, something goes wrong at work or in their personal life, and the child becomes the outlet for their frustration. Externally, nothing may have changed in the child's behavior. They act the same, follow the rules, try to please. But the result is different each time. Sometimes they get praise, sometimes anger. And they have no idea why. They don't understand that the issue is not them, but the unstable emotional state of the narcissistic parent. Growing up in such unpredictable conditions, the child doesn't develop a stable inner map of the world. They live in constant tension, chronic anxiety. They learn that they must always be on guard, monitoring the parent's mood, guessing what is allowed today and what might suddenly cause an outburst. Relaxation feels unsafe. The body gets used to living in readiness mode. Years later, these adults come to therapy saying, "Nothing bad is happening in my life, but I'm shaking. My heart starts racing for no reason." And when we start unpacking their history, we very often find exactly this type of childhood, with a chronically anxious, unstable, or narcissistic parent whose emotional state dictated the weather in the house. Many people who grew up like this carry the consequences into adulthood. They often have low self-esteem, a strong inner belief that they are not good enough and cannot be loved just as they are. They may develop perfectionism and a compulsive drive for achievement, but almost never feel calm satisfaction from what they've done. Any success feels either undeserved or insufficient. They struggle with boundaries and tend to be too nice and accommodating. They put other people's needs above their own, even when they're exhausted and desperate for support themselves. Saying no feels dangerous, like it might cost them love or connection. And here we come to a crucial point. When I work with such people and we look at their childhood, the goal is not to find someone to blame and stay stuck in that. We cannot change the past context. We cannot rewrite the childhood that has already happened. But we can understand the mechanisms that were formed in that environment. We can see how those mechanisms helped the child adapt back then, and how they now limit the adult. And we can carefully adjust them. Most importantly, we can show that inner child, now living in an adult body, that they were never the problem. They were adapting to an unhealthy environment. They are not responsible for the adult decisions, emotional immaturity, or disorders of their parents. This is where real liberation begins. Liberation from a burden that a person may carry unconsciously for most of their life. When that burden finally starts to lift, many people experience a strange feeling. Wait, is it really possible to live like this, without constant guilt, without endless self-blame, without the need to prove my worth every second? Yes, it is. A life where you don't have to constantly justify your existence, where you don't have to feel ashamed for things that never belonged to you in the first place, where love is not a reward for correct behavior, but a natural human need that you have the right to. If what I've described resonates with you, if you recognize yourself in these patterns and don't fully understand what is happening inside you, this is a signal not to ignore. Working through these mechanisms is possible, and it can radically change your quality of life. If you feel that you're ready to start this work, you can find my contact details in the description and book a consultation so we can explore your unique story. And if this video helped you understand yourself a little better, support it with a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who might need to hear these words too.